Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. Today is Saturday, and on Saturdays, I like to do my top 100 comics in my collection videos. So, this is part 7? It's part 7. Oh my goodness. Wow. So, part 7. We still have a few more comics to go. This is now in the top 50 of my comics. This is from numbers 50 to 41 on my list. And these comics that I'm about to show you they're pretty big books. The average price is around $3,000, or $2,500 to $3,000 range. Um, so yeah, they're pretty big books. They're pretty great books, and I hope you enjoy them. I'm going to try to give you a pretty good sense of these books as well. The first book that I'm going to show you is one of those books that it actually is important to understand the effects that certain things have on grades, because this book would have been probably like a 9.0. It's actually very, very beautiful book, but ugly at the same time, and I'll explain this. This one is Strange Adventures number 12. Space Adventures number 12. And Space Adventures number 12 is a famous Steve Ditko cover. It's a classic cover. It's one of those ones where if you look at the Space Adventures run, it's probably the kind of premier issue that everyone seeks. So that's why it is it's about a $2,500 book, even in this grade, and even with the cover looking the way it is. So this is one of those books where it would have graded a lot higher. It's actually pretty flawless. But the issue with it is it has foxing, and it has a lot of foxing. And foxing is really caused by just, the paper, the way the paper can sometimes degrade over time. So it's a sad issue that it has this major foxing, and the foxing, you can see, it would be a lot more brilliant if it was if it didn't have the foxing. You can see it really bad on the back as well, and that just kills the grade. It just really kills the grade. So there's no spine issues or anything. It's just foxing, and it just brought it down to a 4.0. So but it's a great book to have in my collection. It's one that I truly enjoy. It's even with the foxing, it still presents reasonably well. But that book would sell for about $2,500, and it's a fairly rare book. It is a golden age book. There are 83 of those on the census, so pretty rare book. And it was from 1954. So the next book on my list is one that there's 62 of those on the census. I was looking at the wrong number. 62 of those on the census. Now this book, actually I was surprised how common this book is on the census. And it's a great book. I love this book. And this book was even hot before the movie that made it even hotter. But this is Tales to Astonish. And it says Groot. And it is the first appearance of Groot, and he's on the cover. Now my copy, is, you can see, it's a green label. And because of that, it really kills the value of the book. So almost half. But even at that price, this is about a $2,500 book. And it's the first appearance of Groot. Mine has, it's missing a centerfold, which is kind of annoying. That is a pretty common issue with a lot of comics, because the staples just might not grab that centerfold as well. But this is a classic Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby cover. Just a great cover. It's so Marvel, when it first started out, it did a lot of these kind of classic horror comics, just these monster related ones. And it was only later that they kind of switched over to doing more superhero stuff. But this character was kind of considered one of the popular characters from that monster run in Tales to Astonish. And it was a character used in Guardians of the Galaxy, and that really brought this book up to that next level of height of popularity. But it was always a fairly expensive book. So this is Tales to Astonish number 13 from 1960. A nice Silver Age book. Okay. And there are a lot of those on the census. I was actually surprised how many of those were on the census. I thought it was a much rarer book, but there's 470 of those in the universal grade on the census. Okay, the next one is a book that I was super excited to win. And this one, it really shows the effect of restoration on price, because it would probably be a lot more valuable if it wasn't for the restoration. But this is a Batman number 3. And the thing is, with restoration in the Golden Age, it was much more common that you would get a Golden Age book and you would get it restored, because that way you could keep the book looking the way it used to look when it was originally sold. And you could actually keep the book healthy, because a lot of these older books, they kind of fall apart over time, right? So, I mean, this book is from 1940, so we're talking about 80 years. It's a pretty old book. And it is the first appearance of Catwoman in costume. So that's what is really going for this book. And it is a book that I really like. I always liked the character Catwoman. It's a Bob Kane cover, so it's got all the classic elements for Batman. And it's a Bill Finger story. He was one of the creators of Batman. So, and this one has some color touch, pieces added, staples removed, tape on interior cover. So all those things is why it's restored, and it has moderate restoration. Now, moderate restoration in this grade does impact the value, but it doesn't impact it as much if it was compared to if it was a much higher grade. So based on that, I value this book at around $2,580. If it was unrestored, it'd be over $35 to $4K. So it's a much, it really gets the price down when it is restored. There are 185 of those books on the census, and there are 66 restored copies. So it is actually, you can see how in the Golden Age, a large percentage of the books are restored. So, I mean, that's like 1/3 of them are restored. So it gives you a sense of how frequently they restored the books. The next book on my list is another Batman title. And this is a really great book. I got this actually from one of my viewers that watched my channel, and he had some really great books. And he just happened to have this one. This is Batman 47 in a 4-0. And this is the origin of Batman. And it's just a really great cover, too. It's got the bat signal and the bat plane and the Batmobile. And it's got Batman sort of in behind Robin, sort of reading over his shoulder almost. So yeah, just a great book. It is the origin of Batman. It is, again, a Bill Finger story. Bob Kane and cover. And also Charles Paris. But it is the detailed origin story of Batman. So this is a major key for the Batman series. And this is from 1948. And it is a fairly rare book. So it's Batman 47. It goes for about $2,800 in that grade. And there's 235 of them on the census. The next book, I was, one sec. I was actually a little bit surprised by this one, and I almost had to consider if I should move it down on my list of top 100 comics, because the price has kind of gone all over the place. This is one of those books that the price can be really high or really low. It's one of those things where it's a fairly rare book, it's a fairly sought after book, but sometimes people get a good deal on it. And it is Captain Marvel Adventures number 18. And this is it's a great cover, first of all, but it's the first appearance of Mary Marvel. And she's a popular character. In some ways, now that all these characters have become DC characters, it's Mary Marvel that's actually the most used of the characters and kind of the more popular of the three characters, which is kind of funny. So Mary Marvel is just a very popular character. Um, and so this is her origin and first appearance, and Marvel, of Mary Marvel and Marvel Family. Um, and it's by C.C. Beck is the artist that did this. And C.C. Beck did a lot of the Captain Marvel covers. So, yeah, and art. So he's kind of like the major artist for Captain Marvel. And this is from 1942, and it's in a 3.5. So not too bad. But I want to explain a little bit about that book in terms of price. So when I valued it at $2,900. Now, the funny thing is, it's all over the place. Right now, the fair market value is maybe $2,500, but there was a recent sale that was for a lower grade that was for more. So it's all over the place. It's kind of one of those things where it's really hard to figure out the price because it sometimes sells for more, sometimes sells for a lot less. So it's all over the place. And there was actually higher grades that sold for less. So I valued it based on what I originally saw. But they now list the fair market value at $2,500. But I don't know because it's all over the place. But I valued it at $2,900 because that was what it was when I did the compiling of this list. Such an odd book. But it is one where you almost have to hold it and wait for your price instead of putting it up for auction and hoping that you get the best price. It's kind of weird. But there's 144 of those on the census, so it's a fairly rare book, and considering it is a popular character. Okay, the next book is one that I really love. It is a book that this is one of those ones where you can sort of choose the price. It is a book that is highly sought after, especially by collectors like myself who collect Seduction of the Innocent books. This is Reformed Schoolgirls. Schoolgirl. It is one of the most sought after SOTY books. And it's just a classic cover. So this book, it's in a 2.5. When I looked this up, I was actually a little bit surprised because I just looked it up again just to make sure that the prices hadn't changed too much. I valued it at $2,900, but there was just a recent sale for a lower grade that was $3,300. So it's like, again, this one of these books that you can sort of set the price by whatever you want for it. And, it's crazy how much people chase after this book, and it's a really hard book to find. There are only 46 copies on the census, and it is a very popular book. So that's Reformed Schoolgirl. And that book is actually in the Seduction of the Innocent for the fact of the cover itself. And it's actually one of those rare cases where in the Seduction of the Innocent book, they actually took photographs of some of the covers. And most of the Seduction of the Innocent, the books that were mentioned in it, it's really hard to figure out which books they are because the references can be a little bit vague. But this case, they have a photo. It's one of the photos of that cover, and he mentions why he placed it inside of his book, where he basically said that this book is corrupting the youth, that this sexy girl is, suggesting, bad things to little kids. So I don't know. So it's, yeah, that was a really great book from the Seduction of the Innocent comics. And this one is a book that I actually kind of overpaid, but it's one that I really wanted in my collection, and it's Zip Comics number 35, Now, this is the first appearance of a character that I really like called Ginger. She's an Archie character. And Zip Comics actually does have other first appearances. I think Jughead and a few other characters made their first appearance in Zip Comics. Most people recognize Pep Comics for Archie. His first appearance was in number 22 of Pep Comics. But Zip Comics also had some Archie characters appear. Now, this comic has almost a double key effect because it's also one of these covers where collectors will chase after punching of the Nazi. So it's a Nazi getting punched on the cover. But it is also the first appearance of Ginger. Now, CGC doesn't even realize that that is, like, it doesn't mention. You'll notice it doesn't have, like, in the typical place, normally it'll say right in here that it's the first appearance of Ginger or whatever character. But it is one of those kind of unknown things about this book. It is the first appearance of Ginger, and she's kind of a, she's not a super major character, but she did have her own series in the Golden Age. So and her books are quite pricey because they feature a lot of good girl art. So a character that I really enjoy. And I thought this one presented really, really well. Now, I could have gotten a slightly higher grade for only a couple $100 more. But I ended up buying this one because I just liked the way it presented. And this was a CGC and the other one was a CBCS. So sometimes, yeah, CGC can command a little bit more money, even from me. But this one just really presented really well. I just, thought it looked really good. It looked like it actually kind of could have been pressed as well. If you look at the very top here, I'm not sure if you can see it on the camera, but it looks like it was never pressed, and it could have been pressed out and maybe even get a higher grade if it was cracked open. So Zip Comics number 35, first appearance of Ginger. And this book sells for about $2,900. And it's a really rare book. There's only 12 on the census. So just a pretty rare book. It's one of those ones that you just don't see that often. And it's a great book to have in the collection. Okay, the next book is not so rare. But it is one that there's a lot of people, like, this shows you the power of demand. And the Zip Comics, it's a rare book. This book is the most common that I'm going to show in this list, and it's this book. But it is just such a sought after book. This is Giant Size X-Men number 1, and this is got so many first appearances in it. It's the first appearance of Storm, first appearance of Nightcrawler, first appearance of let me read all the titles. Storm, Nightcrawler, Colossus, Thunderbird. Also, what's her name? The one from New Mutants. Something Ilya Rasputin or whatever. She is a baby in this, So it has like a bunch of first appearances. They're all on the cover. It's kind of a great book. A lot of people collect this one. It was one of those books that during the comic boom, it went through the roof. It was like, in a 9.8, it went up to almost $200,000. This book, I got kind of a little bit, they PGX, people always say, oh, PGX is such a, the grades are not as strict. Well, they were really strict on this one. So this is a 5.0. I thought it was going to be a higher grade. It just has this blemish up here. It's actually it's quite flawless except for that blemish there. And it does have some staining on the back actually, but they really killed the grade for that. So this is Giant Size X-Men number 1. First appearance of a bunch of characters. And the funny thing is, as I was saying, it's not a rare book. It is a very common book. It has 10,462 on the census. It is just really common. But is a book that I valued at $3,000. There was actually a recent sale for $3,100. So it's one of those books where probably maybe the fair market value might be a little higher than what I estimated, but I estimated at 3,000. Okay, the next book is one of those books that I was actually shocked that this made the list, because I didn't even think it would make my top 100 list, because I didn't pay much for this book. I think I paid 100, somewhere around that, $100, $200, something like that. So this is one of the books in my collection that has gone up the most because it's gone up through the roof. But it is a really rare comic, considering. So this is Invincible #1, the first appearance of Invincible. And it's in a 9.2, which is a fairly high grade. It's not super high grade. It's a modern book. But it was a very low print run. There just wasn't that many of them. There's 1,300 of these on the census. So it's considering it's a modern book where everybody submits everything off to CGC, it is actually not that common to find. I valued this book at $3,000 for this book, and there was actually a recent sale for an 8.5, I should say, 8.5, which is a lower grade, much lower grade, for $3,300. So this book is insane how much it's gone up. And as I said, I paid a couple $100 for it, so I was quite happy to get that this book has gone up that much. And that was number 52 on my list. Now number 42 on my list. Is it 42? 32. 32 on my list. I gotta get the numbers straight. Okay, that's number 32. Number 31 on my list of my top 100 comics is one that I recently got, and I was super excited to get this book, and especially this particular copy of this book, because it is just cool on so many levels, and I'll explain. This is Crime Detective Comics, number 9. Now this is, again, another book that was mentioned in The Seduction of the Innocent, because right here is Frederick Wortham, the guy that wrote The Seduction of the Innocent. And this book was really making fun of him. And he didn't like that so much, so he actually took a photo of this cover and put it inside The Seduction of the Innocent when he wrote it. This book is cool for that fact that it's one of the cooler books in The Seduction of the Innocent, because not only is it mentioned in The Seduction of the Innocent, but it's about the seduction. It's almost like, you know, this came before, obviously, The Seduction of the Innocent, but it's one of those books that was really commenting on Wortham and his impact that he was having, because he was such a strong advocate against comics. And the comic industry didn't like that. And so they really, you know, took offense to him, and they wanted to basically put him in his place. So this is Detective Comics number 9 from 1949. It was used in The Seduction of the Innocent. Character of Frederick Wortham on the cover. And that's actually what they put in the notes here. It has white pages, which is super rare for a Golden Age book. It is actually the highest graded copy on the CGC census. And it is extremely rare. There's only 8 copies on the census. So it's a ghost. It's a really hard book to find. To have the highest graded copy of it is kind of cool. And one more cool element, it's a pedigree. So this is from the Promise collection. So it's a book where it was part of a collection of comics known as the Promise collection, where basically 2 boys were sent off to the Korean War, and they're brothers, and they basically, the younger brother asked the older brother, please take care of my funny books if anything bad should happen to me. Well, something bad did happen to him. He died during the Korean War, and his brother kept the promise, and that's the name, the Promise collection. And he kept the books in pristine condition, because they are in these kind of grades, like 9.2 for from a book from 1949. It's just insane, like that he was able to keep them in such great shape. And if you think about it, he was keeping these, like, that's one thing that people don't understand about the golden age of books. They didn't have bags and boards. They often just would, put the books into a box or like stack them, and like they just didn't have the conditions that we do now, where we really protect the comics. And for it to have white pages and to be such a high grade just is amazing. It's a testament to his commitment to his brother to protect these books. So there was a lot of really high graded books that in the Promise collection. So this is Crime Detective #9, and it's like my number 40 or 32, number 32 book in my collection, and it is a it is a big book. Again, I valued it at $3,360, which is what I paid for it, but it could be worth more than that depending on the right buyer. I just was lucky to get it when I did. So I hope you enjoyed this part 7 of my top 100 comics. And every Saturday I will be putting out another installment, so you can stay tuned. And you can also watch the past 6 parts. I give a lot of knowledge in those, and I hope you enjoy watching those as well. So thanks again for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and bye for now.